now. Change the view. All right, we'll do a slight countdown. 3, 2, 1. As I live and breathe here on our first podcast with fried chicken for breakfast, we have the one and only Adrian Doughty.
Hello, my friend. There you are. Look at you. You're nearly better looking than me. What's going on?
Nearly. How we doing, Adrian? So,
well, we had a nice storm here this morning down in sunny Sussex, down in the south of England, for those that know where that is. But I'm feeling good. I've had my coffee. I'm rocking and rolling.
Excellent. Now, Adrian, I have the pleasure of knowing you for quite some time. But those of you who don't know of Adrian, you are a very interesting man. You have lived many lives, and that's why I wanted you to be my first guest on the podcast. All right. So you're a comedian, entertainer. You have associations with some interesting characters in England. So they say. It is. So some interesting characters from all walks of life.
Yeah, I mean, let's hope we have some fun over the next few months doing these different things. All I would say to your listeners is that, it's all true. I assume there'll be a comment section. So I no doubt we'll have our fair share of people that will probably think we're talking a load of old nonsense, but I can assure you we're not. And the sheer fact that it's been such a fascinating journey for me, I'm hoping that we can sort of have a mixed outcome, bit of entertainment, but also maybe share some of the wisdom. A good friend of mine says most folk, when they get a bit older, wish they could just sort of lift that off and sort of pass all the information on, save anyone having to go through the pain barriers, of course. But it doesn't always happen. But anyway, there you go. Over to you.
And also how things, a lot of things have changed just in the last few years. But, you've been around, you've been in interesting circles for many years, probably as old as I am. So, it'll be interesting to get some of your insights. So first of all, Adrian, if you would like to just tell us a bit about yourself and, where you've come from.
Well, I was born in South London. Probably known to most of the people in the world, near the tennis. Not necessarily at the top of the hill, I dare say, but at the bottom of the hill. Place called Rains Park. I went to a school in Rains Park, and then on to a school called Pelham Middle School, which I think is now an old people's home, and then a school called Pelham High School, which is now a block of flats, albeit a sort of the same building, but turned into a block of flats. So school wasn't really. I can't sit here and say I loved school. School was tough for me. Do you know what I mean? I was dyslexic. That no one even knew what that was. It wasn't invented at that point. And I understand now you're a registered disability if you've got dyslexia now, but it certainly weren't the case in my day. So it was a tough time. It was a tough time. I think also that as a child, I had like those two little bits of skin, that Chinamen have on either side of their nose. So most of the time I was in the playground being called Pancake. So I can't say that my self-esteem, along with the dyslexia, wasn't particularly, I can't say I was a confidence child, and one or two people probably watching this would agree. Yeah.
Right. So eventually you became a butcher, right? You were a butcher?
Yeah, in all fairness, my grandfather had a little butcher's shop on Wimbledon Broadway, opposite the famous Wimbledon Theatre.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got to about 12, something like that, 11, obviously I was sort of scurfed off by the ear holes and had a broom stuck in my hand, and I was making the sausages and generally not realising it, but starting my early beginnings in the meat trade, much to the disgust of some of my vegan friends these days. But there you go. Yeah.
There we go. All righty. So You went from being a butcher, okay? Um, was that your trade? What was your next trade after being a butcher?
Well, in all honesty, if you sort of look back at the whole dyslexia thing, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, you used to have the career office, and they'd say, "What do you want to do?" I didn't know what. I didn't have a bloody Scooby Doo what I wanted to do. I've got to be honest. So eventually, because I'd obviously spent by that time, say 4 years helping my grandfather in the butcher shop, and because of my comfort zone of being at school, one thing I did know is I didn't want to be doing anything where it felt like I was at school. I didn't want any of that kind of like at that point in time. Some of the things I've done since makes this a contradiction in terms, but at that time, I just thought if I'd done something that I was already good at, it would give me a head start. And that was a simple analogy that I applied. And so I sort of, I initially went and got a job. There used to be a company called Dewhursts in England. I'm trying to think of the name of the owner. Vesti, Lord Vesti owned it. Massive, big institution. But I was only there for about, I don't know, 10 weeks. And then obviously the family kind of, I got seconded. I'm not quite sure. I think my grandfather had a slight stroke. You know, I think that kind of speeded things up a little bit. And then I was there till I was 18. And at that stage, I'd outgrown the shop a little bit, which if you think about it, I've been in since I was 12, so it was only a little shop. He'd moved to the back streets of Wimbledon by then. And I can remember thinking to myself, well, I can't get any more wages unless we have more customers. And he was in his late 60s at that point. So he was sort of winding down a bit. So one day I said to him, and this sounds like an easy thing, but I felt it was a real pressure because I thought all the family wanted me to stay doing that. And I thought I was going to upset people. And, you know, I don't know why, you know, these things go through your head at that age, obviously. And, but anyway, I said to him, I'm thinking of getting another job. And, you know, I said, the good news is we've took XYZ today on the tier takings, and the bad news, I'm thinking of getting another job. That's what I said. Right. And so he didn't stop me. And so that's where we went. And in those days, we used to have something called the Yellow Pages. Even you can remember that. Yeah. So I just opened it up. And there was a guy called Dave Buddin who sadly came to a sad end, sadly. But anyway, at the time, he answered the telephone. And I went to Sainsbury's in Putney in South London and done a trades test. And from there, I went to Wimbledon. And then from there, my meat career just went from strength to strength. And I literally, I suppose I led the way. I was in the first scanning store when there was, you know, scanning wasn't invented. Yeah. So we got all involved in all of that and how to actually use all that technology to make it more profitable and prepare the right meats. And you could also then see what was being stolen, and I could, you know, do an hour on that alone, you know. So that then I went to a Surbiton, which had the highest sales per square foot. Obviously, once again, for those that don't know, it's in sort of Surrey, near the River Thames, once again in that whole kind of catchment area of where everyone, all the sort of millionaires row of London, you could say, I suppose, without actually being in the city. Mm-hmm. From there, I went and opened a new store on the A3 in Cobham.
Oh, Cobham, nice area.
Yeah, I stumbled a bit there, to be fair. Stretched me. That was when my marriage started having a few challenges, and unbeknown to me, that was really the beginning of supermarkets generally, and Sainsbury's in particular, deciding that obviously meat departments were an expensive item to have in a supermarket, and they started to scale them down. Unfortunately for me, being my name's Adrian and I was the highest paid, guess who they started on? Obviously sitting here now, there are no meat departments, there are no meat managers or anybody at all. But obviously me being a bit of a eccentric Englishman, I took it personally. So a war began.
Right. A war began. Yeah. I see. So am I right in saying that you kind of transitioned from packing meat to flaunting your meat because you became a stripper as well, right?
Your prime porky walkies, stab one tonight, eh? Yeah, I mean, I helped a guy buy a nightclub, which is a story in itself. But part of that journey was that I ended up owning 50% of a nightclub in Aldershot called the Night Owl.
Okay.
And I thought, well, that's funny. I own half a nightclub. I've never pulled a pint in my life. I suppose I'd best go and sort of get a bit of on the hand experience. So I finished up in an outside bar with this lad, and it transpired that he was gay, which is fine, but it just meant he didn't mention the 200 to 400 girls that were arriving on the coaches outside. So I was sort of like, going, and as the evening unfolded, I'll tell you what it was. It was the annual general meeting for the charity Scope.
All right.
And they had various councillors there, the vicar and so on.
What was it called back then?
Well, it was Scope. I think you'll see them. They're shops. I think they look after single mums and things like that, and help with, money and items to set up home if they've, left a bad relationship or that type of stuff, as far as what I can remember just sitting here. But anyway, the upshot of it all was that the officials, they'd done all the voting, I think the officials left, and that left a young 18 DJ, and he was a young 18. And I, by that point, had learned that all of these girls, wives, girlfriends, had travelled up from Waterlooville, Portsmouth, Southampton. They were all the sailors' wives. And obviously, I guess they don't get out that often, and the boys were all away. So it was a bit of a mad environment. And the first I knew about that mad environment was when they said to me, "My friend said you're the stripper." Right. So I just said, "Of course I am," just as you would on a Saturday night in a bar. I didn't mean it. I just said it. I didn't, I've been with my grandfather behind a butcher shop counter for years. It was just a response I'd just done. I didn't mean it. I never thought of it. And so, I don't know, about an hour later, she came back. She went, "Are you ready? The stripper should be going to have a whip round in a minute." And with that, she disappeared. Because I said to her that, never mind whether I'm the stripper, I said, "You better dig deep in your handbag because I'm not cheap, And then the next thing I know, she turned up with £140.
Nice.
And so I found myself out there with a song that used to be in the charts called Mr. Vane. I know what I want because I want it now.
Yeah. Yes.
And they changed the words to "We know what we want and we want it now." And so anyone old enough on here can remember the Next shops. I had my little black silky Next underwear on that was the in thing at the time back in the 90s, and I think me little silk underwear was last seen heading down the A3 in about 5 different parts. All I know is £140. £140 later, I was richer. I thought I'd found the answer to the rising interest rate at the time, because at that point I had the best part of about £600,000 worth of debt and houses, and that's another part of the story. But that was how that went. So that's how that started. But in all honesty, I mean, all I can say, I don't know if anyone else has had this experience. Be interesting to see the comments afterwards. But sometimes things happen in your life, and you sort of go home and you're sort of scratching your head and you're going, "That was amazing," but like, did that really happen? Was it a one-off experience? Could that be real? Did that really happen? Am I in a dream? Maybe I dreamt it. Maybe it didn't happen. But there was women, mothers saying, "Oh, can you sign my daughter's bra? And can you kiss my daughter? It's her birthday," and everything. I just, and you got to remember, I'm not being flash saying this. I've just told you already that I was like the ugly duckling. Are you with me? I was a dyslexic, pancake-faced fellow, and I defy anybody to stand in front of the mirror, even Robbie Williams or Tom Cruise, and look at themselves, and I don't think Tom Cruise is too tall, so he probably wants to be a bit taller. You know what I mean? And so on. Most of us are not thinking that on that vein, and certainly I wasn't. But I ended up in Italy on a family wedding, and my cousins went to Bush Davis School of Dance. So we all ended up with a big barrel of wine on the middle of a storm in the mountains of Lake Garda. And then I brought the conversation up, and it was them really that encouraged me. And it's them I have to thank for giving me that confidence to go. And they went, no, you should do it. You should do it. So I came back to London and booked a hen night, hired a proper stripper, and off we went. And what can I say? by the end of the evening, I was signing bras, and you know, once again, my underwear was heading down the A3. So a new chapter was born, mainly out of fear, because obviously by that time I had 25 homeless people, 3 children, interest rate that was going. I mean, as we film this is I think November the 6th, 7th, 1922 that we're recording this. I'm talking about in the early 90s when the interest rate went up to 17% for some. Everyone's screaming at the moment because I think it's gone to 4.5. So you can imagine what 17 feels like. And so once again, anybody watching this, I'm not being flash. I'm not saying, hey, look at me. I'm just saying I had 25 homeless people looking at me going, it's going to be all right, age, isn't it? And I'm going, yeah, of course it is. You know, I mean, bless them. They'd come out of a park bench or living in a car for a year or you know, and they're safe for once. They actually felt there was a future for them. And all of a sudden, we're all caught up in this set of circumstances where the Prime Minister of the day, Margaret Thatcher, went off that way. Robert Maxwell went off the back of a ship. We're not sure whether he jump or was he pushed. I think the jury's still out, but it wasn't exactly a good time. In the same way that there's a lot of uncertainty now. That's where we were at that moment of time. So I wouldn't say I'd done it because I thought I was Charlie Big Potatoes. I'd done it because I was petrified of the debt, the fear, the responsibility of the children, and the responsibility to the poor homeless people that I was that were relying on me, of course.
Fair play, Adrian. So with regards to the stripping, that must have been fun also. But when did the comedy side of things come in?
Well, funny enough, you've got to bear in mind that start that I'm sharing with you, I was 37 then. You know, I mean, to start becoming an Adonis at 37 is quite ridiculous in its own right. However, that's what happened. And, but you know, I mean, as successful as it was in the day, I wasn't naive to the fact that I was 37. So, of course, the first thing that struck me was that the compare or the drag act, whatever, was earning double what the strippers was earning. Nice. So it didn't take me very long to sort of go, well, hang on a minute, I've got a sell-by date on this .1. I don't even know if I'm any good at it, you know. And we'll drop a couple of names in here, but like, for example, one of the guys back in the day, in the early part of his career, of course, was Chico, as in Chico time.
Chico time, yes.
And it's now 2022. I'm talking about 1990. If you look at Chico today, he looks as good a shape, if not better, than. Can you imagine what he looked like in 1990? Right. And he'd come running in. He would be what they call doubling, so they'd go off and do another show after the one that they'd just done. And of course, I didn't have 2 to do because I was like the new boy on the block. So they went, all right, if we go on first age, you know, like, and I'm going, you know, you got to follow this absolute Adonis of a man, and still is to this day. Do you know what I mean? You know, you just got to give it to him. He's got charisma oozing out of every part of his body, and he is literally fitter, you know. So that was that was a learning curve. So I slipped over to the comedy. I can only say that being behind a meat counter, being on Eastbourne Pier that we haven't touched on yet, you know, with a microphone, I think that all prepared me for the next stage. And I think that so I suppose compared to others, it came a little bit easier to me. I'm obviously haven't been any good at learning scripts particularly, but I've been quite fast with dealing with the audience side of it. So that kind of carried me through. So in that respect, but of course I thought, well, how can I be a drag act? I'm not gay. As I'm sure we'll talk on, I did own I was one of the first persons with a dear friend of mine, Lance Frazier, to start the first gay television network on IP television, long before the BBC and ITV, let me tell you. However, so, you know, I'm not homophobic by any stretch of imagination, clearly. However, I do think that you can't lie to an audience. So there was no point me sort of dressing up and being a feminine drag act,
Yeah.
because I don't think it would have worked.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'd feel comfortable like that. But at the time, I loved the movie Mrs. Doubtfire with Robin Williams. Not just, I mean, him as an actor and as a comedian, of course. And of course the character, but also obviously what resonated with me because I was living it was the sad story behind it, of course. So that's when I decided to do Mrs. Doubtfire, and that has been put me in good stead to this day, actually. You know, so if anybody's a Mrs. Doubtfire fan,
Wasn't your name is Mrs. Doughty Fire, right?
my name's is Adrian Doughty, yeah. So yeah, Mrs. Doughty Fire. That's what we called it, Mrs. Doughty Fire. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yes, dear. Once the father of my children passed away, dear, that was it. Total celibacy. Oh, look at you, Sonny, dear. Wake up and smell the coffee, dear. So we had fun with it. The only thing I found was I couldn't stay in character very long because you're trying to control a room full of, you know, girls on a night out with that gentle voice doesn't work too well. So I ended up slipping into coming out of it as Miss Robin Williams does in the movie Mrs. Doubtfire. So you get a bit of Mrs. Doubtfire.
With a bit of Dame Edna as well. Is it like Dame Edna was very famous and
well that came about because the girls in particular, they love the glamour and the glitter. And of course Mrs. Doubtfire is more sort of old lady, sort of dowdry looking really. So I brought in the Dame Edna to try and sort of lift the, you know, the glitter side of it.
Yeah.
So obviously, all of a sudden, then there was also hello, darlings, you little megastar, you are, little Sonny. Look at you, little sweetie pie, you are.
Oh,
you're a little bit of a spunky devil, if you don't mind me saying, dear. But I'm all right, darlings. I've been, you'll never guess who I bumped into at the chronic irrigation department only on Saturday. Yes, Harry, little Megan, darling, she was in there. I said, hello, darling, fancy bumping into you, my dear, how are you? She said, I'm all right. She said, I've been conning a few million out the royal family. She said, things are not too bad. So that was, yeah, there we go. The great
Dame Edna. Great late Dame Edna. Yes. My father was a big fan.
Still alive. Yeah, John Humphreys.
Still alive?
Yeah, Humphreys, yeah. Yeah, Humphreys, yeah. Barry Humphreys, sorry. My apologies. Sorry, Barry. Yeah.
Was Barry homosexual?
No. I can't legitimately answer that question. And as I've already said, everything I'm saying is from fact. But if you're going from sort of
I mean, his presence
inside information, you know, sort of gossips, I understand he quite enjoyed the fruits of show business. We'll leave it at that, shall we? That's as I understand it. But anyway, does it really matter? Not really.
No.
Hey ho.
That's so good. All right, so your comedy style, you went from stripping. You must have gained a lot of confidence doing that, and that takes you, you know, on a different course where you can feel I'll try other things now, which you may not have done had you not stripped.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I just, you know, I mean, this once again, you know, when you look at these different medias we got, this, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, the websites and everything else, it looks like a flashy, do you know what I mean, showy offy sort of a thing. Well, that obviously is part of show business. That's why I guess it's called show business. But for me, as I've already said, it was very much about trying to sort of reinvent yourself. I thought I was, you know, a bit like Madonna, or, you know, from Mrs. Doubtfire to this to that to this. I mean, in those early days, it was very much about things called dying out a bit these days. Although I don't know why, because they're a fabulous event. What they call the lads' nights, stag nights, gentlemen's nights, smoking evenings. They all amount to the same thing. That's two pretty girls and a blue comedian. Trust me, whether whatever the political correctness is on the out there, or whatever the newspapers or televisions or interviewers that, you know, interview people that have something to say about certain types of comedy, I can assure you, if you go down the back streets of London or even the back streets of, I don't know, Gloucestershire, you know, men that are men in the sense that, you know, they're rough and ready, and you know, they're in the football dressing room, and you know, they're having a punch up or having a row about who should have kicked the ball or whatever. Those people find if something's funny, it is funny. You know, I mean, obviously you're not there to offend people.
Yeah.
But
what did you mean by blue comedian? What does that mean?
a blue comedian would have a tendency to sort of swear and pick on subjects that are a little bit over the top.
Right.
And whereas I done a gig the other night, and they wanted 2 45-minute spots, which is far too long. But obviously, you know, with a couple of years of lockdowns, obviously one takes. Yeah, we don't even know whether it might even happen again. So it's no time for being shy. You got to get stuck in there. But I mean, I said trouser trout and trap too, and there was a letter went in complaining about how rude I was.
Right.
So there's an example of the two.
Yeah.
The two subjects. So yeah.
Well, yeah, times have changed. I think guys will always like, you know, similar style comedy, you know, which you know, not family orientated, having a laugh, making fun of your friends.
That's what it is. It's an extension of that, isn't it? And this exaggerated version of that. And I think as long as it's not done in a spiteful way. I mean, I've been back to places a year later, 2 years later, 10 years later, and I've given somebody a nickname when I was there the first time, and they'll come up absolutely brimming with the biggest smile you ever did see. They go, they still call me Harry Potter's dad, you know, or something like that. And they're pleased to be Harry Potter's dad. And for some of them, it's the only recognition in their lives that they've had. And you know, being Harry Potter's dad is not the worst thing you could be called, is it? You know what I mean? You know, they've probably got, you know, funny specs on and little round, you know, look like an older version of Harry Potter.
Yeah. So, Adrian, I've had the pleasure of coming to some of your comedy events with the Blue Comedy. And I can say it was like, now it seems normal. I know what to expect. But you invited me, must have been over 10 years ago, to that one. It was a group of guys. I think it was a birthday party. And so I came, and you had some strippers. You had a big, strong guy in the back, just keeping an eye on things. And I came with a lady, and I thought this will be fun. We sat at the front, right? And I was completely, this kind of changed the way I saw things, because it was a very new experience. Type of stuff you would read about or someone tells you about, and it's exaggerated. But here we were in a room full of guys drinking. They were very rowdy, having a laugh. And you had these two beautiful strippers who would go around and entertaining the guys and having a good laugh. But then there was one guy who was a bit, he was a bit rowdy, too much, bit aggressive. And you said, don't worry about him. He's all right. Yeah. You know, I was giving you the signal, like, everything all right? He's like, you were like, he's all right. So after like 10 minutes, the lady, one of the strippers, grabbed him and brought him to brought him in front of everyone, give him a very good private dance. He was loving it, okay? But then she was literally like taking his clothes off, and his friends are cheering him on, so he just rolled with it. What I didn't expect to see, all right, was after 5 minutes of him being kind of pampered by this stripper, was the finale, which she put her stiletto heel up his ass. All right. And that's when I think the mood changed in the room. It's fair to say. But, you know, even I've told my friends this story, and it's one of those things, you had to be there, because that was like a bit of fun mixed with a bit of I don't know, sadism or something, you know. What was that?
I think the answer to that is in the you know, and you've actually booked and promoted a couple of these events since, so you are aware of it. because you've said it to me in your own way in what you want. But what happens, of course, is that the promoter or the club chairman or the whatever it is are very clear about what they do and don't want. And as you've already alluded to with that guy, he was a pain in the arse. Ha! Forgive the pun. And so, you know, we all, you know, a lot of these podcasts are going to be about understanding that for every reaction, there's a reaction. And for his action, he got a reaction. So
he got a rare action.
He
had a rare action.
That's the best thing. The only other thing I'd throw in there is that I know the artist you're talking about, and she's been in popular demand all over the country for 20 years, to my knowledge, maybe more.
Okay.
At least 20 years. And you know, I mean, I see her do that once. There was a guy I was working with, another good friend and good comedian friend of mine, and we were in a place in Walton. Mm-hmm. And this guy, I don't know what he must have had a cocktail of every drug and drink that he could get his hands on. I think he'd robbed Boots or something. It was absolutely off his nut. And every few minutes he just kept shouting out, "Top banana! Top banana! Top banana!" Well, in the end, my friend Danny come up to me. He went, "Hey," he went, "take that microphone," he said, "because I'm going to knock him out." And so I went on and ploughed on with him, and I just kept putting him in all the jokes and I said, anyway, so this fella went down the road, and when he got there, he went, "Top banana," you know, and I got there before he did, and we just carried on like that. But then that same dancer came out that you're referring to, and even by my standards, what you saw became paled into insignificance. How he done the backward somersault is a mystery to me to this day. But anyway, so there you go. So it happened. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned before, Adrian, like you don't keep scripts when you do comedy, and I've seen you in action, and I suppose what you do is actually very difficult because you feel the crowd first, and you include everyone, the audience is the content, right? Becomes the content of the comedy. So you're thinking on your feet. Which is very impressive. Not many comedians, you know, go in. Even some have pre-rehearsed lines and they use it. But I've seen when you do that, it's freestyling.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I suppose it is freestyling, but I think it's also 25, 30 years of learning.
Yes.
Your craft. Yes. And you'll see a lot of the some of our household names, and if they're ever making comments on whether it be social media or newspaper articles or whatever it is. I mean, Gary Bushell, for example, is a great advocate for sort of traditional comedy, for example. So there's a man that knows.
Yeah.
You know, everyone says to me, "Oh, Billy Connolly wasn't scripted," but you know what is not scripted. You know, if you could do a line that you don't quite know where it came from, right, but it's hilarious, but you might not use that for 10 years until that moment in time that you're referring to, where you just see this sort of complete set of circumstances that manifest themselves, and at that point, you know, you might say it. You know, I mean, like, I've got this little jacket on today, so someone might shout out something like, "Where'd you get that jacket? Out of a junk shop?" And I'll say, "If you don't shut up, I'll tumble right in your mouth in a minute," you know, something like that. Yeah. Now, obviously, although that looks spontaneous, as you know, I'm always wearing nice jackets, and some of them are out of the junk shop. I'm not trying to be flash. I don't believe in necessarily paying £1,000 for a jacket or something stupid. Do you know what I mean? If it's £3 and it's in a charity shop and I like it, then I'll wear it. The one I got on here was given to me, for example. It is a designer jacket. It's made by somebody, but so it's not about being flash or anything. It's just about dealing with the you know, I think they've paid a ticket, and I think you should sort of present yourself nicely. But of course, you are leaving. You know, they don't realise that when you put the jacket on at 5 o'clock Saturday evening before you left for the gig, you knew what you were going to say when someone shouted something out, and that's the bit. That's the magic that helps to create exactly that, the magic. Yeah.
So when you do an event nowadays, some of the cleaner events, family and, you know, family and mixed events, male and female, these ones, do you look at what the event is, what type of people are going to turn up, and then think of some jokes beforehand?
I think I'm a cheeky chappy. I think you agree with that. You know, years behind a meat counter brings that. You can't. I don't think I can get away from that. So there's no point in trying to be something I'm not.
Yeah.
So I'm always going to be a saucy monkey, anyway. And don't get me wrong, it is getting more difficult to not walk into these little flourishes of drama. But I think you just got to keep focused and have faith in what you are saying, as we just discussed with the jacket. These are well-worn lines and things that are used that work. And they're funny to the majority of people. And if there's sort of, you know, several hundred people, then as much as you don't want to offend the one person, the reality is that you've got to be sort of a little bit brazen and stay true to yourself as best as you can. Now, obviously, as I said, you're not there to offend. So what I would have a tendency to do is I'll split the room into two halves. This is, you know, the clean one. And I'll say, well, how naughty can I be between 1 and 10? And as a rule of thumb, they'll all shout out 12. And then I'll do the same on the other side of the room. Now, that does two things. I think the first thing that it does, if I did make a mistake, I went a little bit over the top, at least say you were the booker, if that was the case, then you can say, well, I heard him ask everybody and everyone said 12. What did you think he was going to do? I thought he was quite good. I thought he was going to be worse than that. I've seen him 10 times worse than that. So I don't know what you're on about. What's the matter with you? So at least it gives you a little bit of a get out of jail card. In all honesty, it's not going to change what I'm going to do one iota, because as you said earlier, obviously you sort of look at the room and you work out how naughty you can be. And so yeah, so I mean, I'll do 45 minutes and not, you know, no swearing or anything like that. But that's not to say the content itself is not saucy. Do you know what I mean? Talking about, you know, whether it's toilets or, you know.
I remember you telling me a story about a guy in a wheelchair who come and spoke to you afterwards, one of your sets.
Yeah, it was his birthday, and I don't know, I didn't actually ask, and I don't know how long he'd been in a wheelchair. And one would assume if I was suddenly in a wheelchair, that you must go. It's a bit like bereavement. You must go through different emotions, and he was definitely a bit angry of life and that, but a fit man. I mean, he had arms like the top of my legs. But it was his birthday. But so anyway, I began, and he started on me. My God, was he vicious and direct and almost spiteful. And so I thought, well, what do I do? You know, sees all these families around him. I've travelled there. I'm not going home. What do we do here? You know. So I tried desperately to work around it, but it was his birthday, and as the song go, it's my party, and I'll cry if I want to, and that's exactly what he did. So I was very much in a bit of a state. So, you know, for anybody politically correct out there, I apologise for what's about to follow. This is your warning. Beep, beep, beep. But, you know, the fact is I wasn't going anywhere. So anyway, eventually, after about 3 times of him abusing me and I was losing credibility, by the second, I fell back to a wonderful comedian that we can talk about another day called Tony Gerard, who was in a wheelchair from the age of 4. Amazing man, fabulous comedian. And so I threw a couple of his lines at him and I went, "All right, don't ever go at me because you're in a wheelchair, and every time you fart, you go up in the air."
It's going to cut.